What's up, beautiful people of YouTube? Today I wanted to do a review of the Razer DeathAdder Elite and also talk about the new review system I'm going to be implementing across all gaming mice from here on out. Each mouse will be broken up into 6 separate sections, and each one of those sections will have its own individual score. Not only that, but each section will be weighted differently. I think the real beauty of this review system is that each person will be able to decide what's most important to them. So for example, you can see that I've given shape the most weight towards the overall score of a mouse. But if shape's not your number one priority, then you can kind of focus on the other parts of the review that are. I don't think I'm going to do written reviews for each section of the mouse, but I will include timestamps in the description of each video going forward. That way you can kind of jump to the sections that you care most about and maybe even skip over the ones you don't care about. The sections are pretty self-explanatory except for maybe the last one. You have shape, sensor, buttons, scroll wheel, mouse feet and cable, and lastly tilt. Tilt is basically just going to cover miscellaneous stuff. Sometimes it could be warranty, customer service, overall build quality materials, coding or side grips, software, RGB, you get the idea. Now, it might seem a little odd that tilt makes up for 10% of the total score when it covers so many things, but that section is really only there if something in the mouse is particularly bad or good. Anyway, enough about the review system. Let's get into the review. The Razer DeathAdder Elite is a large right-handed ergonomic mouse with side buttons on the left only. It is without a doubt Razer's most popular mouse, if not the best-selling gaming mouse in the world. I'm almost a little surprised by its popularity, given how restrictive the shape is. And what I mean by that is, there's just not a lot of freedom to place your fingers wherever. Taking a look at the left side, you can see you only have about half the mouse height to work with, the top half being occupied by these rather large thumb buttons. Taking a look at the other side of the mouse, it's a bit better in terms of overall space, but you still have this fairly pronounced ledge on the right side you have to contend with. Even mouse buttons 1 and 2 have pretty deep finger grooves. The deeper the grooves, the more the mouse dictates where those fingers should go. Just because a mouse doesn't give you a lot of freedom in where to place your fingers, that doesn't inherently make it uncomfortable. It just means that the mouse is less likely to suit a lot of different hand sizes and grip styles. Again, which is why I'm a little surprised by the DeathAdder's popularity. Razer themselves have even touted that it's been the best-selling gaming mouse for over a decade. Despite my initial concerns, I actually found the mouse to be quite comfortable for long-term use. I recorded some mouse cam footage for you guys, just so you can see how I'm holding the mouse when I game, and also how my hand measures up to the size of the DeathAdder. For reference, my hands measure 20.5 by 10.5 centimeters. And as you can see, my grip type is a hybrid between claw and palm, probably more leaning towards the palm side though. While you could full-on claw or fingertip grip this mouse, I think it's so large that the majority of people are going to find it's best suited for a palm grip. There are 2 things I've learned in the search for the perfect gaming mouse. Firstly, comfort does not necessarily equal accuracy. There have been some gaming mice I've used in the past, like the Zowie ZA11, that I've found I'm extremely accurate with, but also that I can't use them for more than an hour before my hand starts to cramp. Conversely, I've used mice like the Zowie EC1 that I found extremely comfortable, but I couldn't aim that well with them. All this really means is that you need to find that right balance of comfort and accuracy. The other thing I've learned in the search for the perfect gaming mouse is that I use a different grip when gaming as opposed to just checking email or browsing the web. This is important because it emphasizes that in order to see how well something will work for you, you need to use it and see for yourself. Reviews like these can give you a general idea of what would suit you best, but there's no substitution for experience. Okay, tangent over. Back to the review. I've decided to actually further break down the shape section into 2 subcategories. Unsurprisingly, they are comfort and accuracy. I'm giving the DeathAdder a 12 out of 15 when it comes to comfort, and a 14 out of 15 when it comes to accuracy. As you'll see from some of these clips, I was playing some of the best Overwatch I've ever played. I do have a small gripe with this mouse when it comes to comfort. After a few hours of play, my middle finger would start to feel uncomfortable, like it needed to be stretched or cracked or something. But it was so mild, I wouldn't even describe it as painful, more just annoying. Overall, the DeathAdder Elite gets a score of 26 out of 30 for shape. Next up, I wanted to talk about sensor. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what sensor is in this mouse. Over at overclock.net, a user by the name QSXCV did a full teardown showing the PixArt 3389, and that seems to be the general consensus. But if you compare the specifications of that sensor versus what Razer is advertising, they're a little off. Razer boasts a tracking speed of up to 450 IPS, when supposedly that sensor can only go up to 400 IPS. More likely than not, it's probably just a typo on Razer's or PixArt's end. Either way, the sensor in this mouse is fantastic. It's felt the snappiest of almost any mouse I've used. It never once lost tracking or spun out at me. The sensor gets a perfect score, 20 out of 20. In terms of buttons, there seems to be a common theme here, light. The DeathAdder Elite has some of the lightest clicks I've used on a mouse. Despite this, I never found myself accidentally pressing any of the buttons. Mouse 1 and 2 have a little too much post travel, but other than that, they feel pretty good. They're still a bit behind the Logitech G403's buttons in terms of tactility and crispness, but overall, there's not too much to complain about. The side buttons are actually some of the best I've used on a mouse and are a personal favorite of mine. The size, location, pre and post travel are all spot on. The DPI buttons are also out of the way and can be rebound to any key. The Razer DeathAdder Elite's buttons earn a score of 17 out of 20. The scroll wheel seems to share the same theme as the buttons, light. Scrolling up or down is extremely easy, requiring little force. Mouse button 3 is similar, actuating without much effort. The scroll wheel is also very grippy, thanks to its studded rubber coating. The steps are well defined, and overall it feels pretty solid. The scroll wheel earns a score of 9 out of 10. Next I want to talk about the DeathAdder's cable and mouse feet. The cable is braided, which is usually a bad thing, but this one is surprisingly thin and flexible. Here you can see just how little pushback there is. It's actually one of the better cables I've found on a gaming mouse. Still a bit behind the Ultralight Phantom's cable, but not too far off. Moving on, the DeathAdder Elite has 2 large mouse feet and one surrounding the sensor. The mouse feet were actually a rather nice surprise here. They glide very smoothly. Overall, Razer did an excellent job with the cable and mouse feet. They earn a score of 9 out of 10. Lastly, we have tilt. Like I said before, this is going to cover some particularly good or bad things not covered by the other categories. One particularly good thing that surprised me about the DeathAdder was its side grips. They're not especially comfortable since they have a hexagonal textured design, but they're not uncomfortable either. What they do is make the mouse feel much more secure in your hand. One particularly bad thing that stood out to me was the software, known as Razer Synapse. I don't mean that it's useless or a CPU hog, but in order to use it, you have to create a Razer account. And if you read some of the fine print of Razer's privacy policy, it almost reads like spyware. If you're really worried about it though, you can install Synapse, set your DPI, and uninstall. Unfortunately, lighting and remap buttons do not seem to save to the mouse. DPI does appear to save, at least temporarily. Pressing one of the DPI buttons on the mouse seems to reset it to a default configuration. My guess would be something along the lines of 800, 1600, 3200, etc. So while I'm impressed with the DeathAdder's side grips, the software is sort of a mixed bag. I think if they could just ditch the mandatory account and ease up on the data they collect, the software would seem much more consumer friendly. Tilt gets a score of 7 out of 10. Overall, the DeathAdder Elite earns a score of 88 out of 100, which is pretty good. With a flawless sensor, good buttons, and a popular shape, it's a recommendation for people with large hands, especially if you primarily use palm grip. I would like to see better mouse 1 and 2 buttons, and perhaps a slightly more safe shape, but as I mentioned previously, the DeathAdder is already so popular and used by so many people, they'd be a little crazy to change it too much. Personally, it's actually my favorite XL sized mouse. Not because it's so comfortable, but just because I'm able to play so well with it. The only mouse I see possibly dethroning the DeathAdder for me is the new Razer Mamba Elite, which I'll be reviewing next. To clarify, I consider the DeathAdder, Zowie EC1, and Razer Mamba all extra large mice, and I consider the Logitech G403 and Final Mouse Ultralight just large mice. Anyway guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you found it helpful, or at least entertaining. Let me know what you guys think of the new review system. I'd love to get your feedback on that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.